My phone buzzed as I reached for frozen peas. The message from my son was short. "We have decided you should step away for now." No explanation. Just a cold dismissal. I was not being fired from a job. I was being erased from my own life. But they forgot that. Before I got old, I got tough. If they want me to step aside, I will step exactly where I can pull the whole curtain down. My name is Loretta Gaines. I am 56 years old. And until this morning, I was a woman who knew exactly where she stood in the world. I live in a quiet subdivision in Spokane Valley, Washington, where the lawns are manicured and the neighbors keep to themselves. I have a routine that keeps the grief of widowhood at bay. I garden with ruthless precision. I volunteer at the public library 3 mornings a week. And for 1 evening every week, I handle the bookkeeping for Silver Pine Community Outreach. I am disciplined. I am reliable. I am the person others trust to hold the keys. My son, Ethan, knows this better than anyone. He is the regional sales manager for a medical device company, a job that requires a winning smile and a heart made of Teflon. He married Mallory, a woman who treats conversation like a chess match. Mallory is always polite, but her warmth is like the glass on a window pane. You can see the sun, but you cannot feel the heat. They are a perfect, polished couple. And I thought I was simply the slightly boring, dependable mother in the background of their shiny lives. I was wrong. I was standing in the produce aisle, inspecting a bag of Gala apples. When my phone buzzed, I pulled it out, expecting a request for a babysitting favor or a reminder about a birthday. Instead, I read the text from Ethan. "We have decided you should step away for now." There was no context, no preamble, just that single, sterile sentence. I stared at the screen. The apples in my hand felt suddenly heavy. Step away from what my first instinct was confusion, followed quickly by a rising tide of panic. I tapped the call button. It rang once, twice. Then it went straight to voicemail. I typed a frantic reply. "Ethan? What is wrong? Is everyone okay?" The response came 10 seconds later, but the tone was so cold it made me shiver under the supermarket fluorescent lights. "Please don't make this difficult." It was not a request. It was a warning. My heart hammered against my ribs. I abandoned the cart right there in the aisle, my need for groceries replaced by a need for answers. I walked to the front of the store to buy a bottle of water. My throat suddenly parched. I swiped my debit card. The machine beeped a harsh, dissonant tone. "Declined," the young cashier said, popping her gum. "That is not possible," I said, my voice sounding thin to my own ears. "Please try it again. There is plenty of money in that account." She sighed and swiped it again. Same noise. She looked at the screen. It says code 04. Restricted. It says the bank froze it for identity verification. I felt the eyes of the people in line behind me burning into my back. Shame. Hot and prickly, flushed up my neck. I paid with the emergency $20 bill I keep in my phone case and walked out to my car, my hands shaking. I sat in the driver's seat and checked my email on my phone, looking for a notification from the bank. Instead, I saw a new message from the director of Silver Pine Community Outreach. The subject line made my stomach drop. Immediate suspension of duties. I opened it, my breath catching in my throat. "Dear Loretta, due to an anonymous complaint regarding financial irregularities in the fund management, we are placing your volunteer position on hold, pending an internal review. Please do not access the system until further notice." The world outside my car window seemed to tilt. This was not a coincidence. A frozen bank account. A suspension from the charity where I had volunteered for 5 years. A text from my son telling me to step away. It was not a series of bad luck events. It was a coordinated strike. I drove home in silence. The house was empty and still. I walked into the study and pulled down the heavy leather notebook my husband, Jim, had used before he passed. He was an auditor, a man who believed that numbers never lied. Only people did. I ran my hand over the cover. Ethan and Mallory thought they were dealing with a confused old woman. They thought they could push me out of my own life, take control of my finances, and ruin my reputation with a few well-placed digital lies. They forgot that I was the one who taught Ethan how to walk, but I was also the one who taught him that actions have consequences. I opened the notebook to a fresh, blank page. I picked up a pen. I did not cry. I did not call them back to beg. Instead, I whispered to the empty room, the anger finally crystallizing into something cold and hard. If they want to play dirty, I will play, clean enough to suffocate them. The silence in my house used to feel peaceful, like a warm blanket I had knit myself. Now, after that text message, the silence felt heavy, pressing against my eardrums like deep water. To understand how I lost my footing so completely, I have to look back. I have to look at the slow, methodical way they dismantled my defenses while I was busy thanking them for their help. It started 7 months ago. The memory is crisp. Ethan and Mallory were over for Sunday dinner. We had finished the pot roast, and Ethan cleared his throat, pulling a sleek folder from his briefcase. He did not look like a predator then. He looked like my son, concerned and capable. "Mum, I have been looking at your utility bills," he said, spreading papers out on the tablecloth. "You are paying too many separate fees. It is a mess. We should add you to our family plan. We can consolidate a few things. It will save you the hassle." I hesitated. I had always paid my own bills. But then Mallory reached across the table and covered my hand with hers. Her skin was cool, her nails perfect. "We just want you safe." "Mom," she said, her voice soft and sweet. "Why worry about due dates when Ethan can handle the admin? You should be enjoying your garden and the savings account," Ethan added, sliding a bank form toward me. "You should add me as an authorized user, just for emergencies. If you fall or get sick, I need to be able to pay for your care instantly." It made sense. It sounded like love. So I picked up the pen and signed. I handed over the keys to my financial privacy because I thought I was handing them to family. The leaks began 3 months later. I noticed a withdrawal of $180. When I texted Ethan, he replied immediately. "That was for your calcium supplements and the new multivitamin order. Do not worry about it." Then it was $240. Insurance premium adjustment. He told me when I called. I took care of it. Then, last month, $600 vanished. "Doctor's retainer fee," he said. I wanted to believe him. But I am an old bookkeeper, and numbers possess a stubborn truth. 2 days ago, a piece of mail arrived at my house by mistake. It was a forwarded invoice from a high-end contractor, addressed to Ethan, but routed to me because of the shared family plan address link. It was for custom lighting fixtures for a master bath renovation. The amount paid was exactly $600. The date of payment was identical to the withdrawal from my savings. I drove to the bank within the hour. I stood at the counter, the paper shaking in my hand. "This is unauthorized," I told the teller. "My son used my savings to pay for his house lights." The teller typed on her keyboard, her face blank. Mr. Gaines is an authorized user on this account. Ma'am, the system shows valid access. We cannot flag a transaction made by an authorized signer. She paused, looking at the screen with that pitying look young people reserve for the confused elderly. Perhaps you should contact him directly to clarify. I went home, feeling a cold knot tighten in my stomach. Ethan came over that evening. He did not knock. He used his key. He found me sitting in the dark living room. He did not shout. He did not throw things. He simply sat on the ottoman opposite my chair, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. The bank called me, he said. His voice was terrifyingly level. You bought light fixtures with my money, I said. He sighed. A long, weary sound. Mom, you are confused. We discussed this. You are under a lot of stress lately. You are mixing things up. I am not mixing anything up, I snapped. He stood up, towering over me in the dim light. See, you are agitated. This is exactly why we need to simplify things for you. Let me handle the finances. You just rest. He walked out, closing the door softly. That was when the text message from this morning finally made sense. Step away was not a suggestion. It was a command. I locked the front door and engaged the deadbolt. My hands were trembling, but my mind was sharpening. I went to the closet and pulled down the fireproof box where we kept the family records. I needed to see exactly what I had signed 7 months ago. I sifted through the deeds, the insurance policies, and the birth certificates. Then I froze. Stuck to the back of the utility transfer form was a document I did not recognize. It was a photocopy of a durable medical power of attorney. It granted Ethan full authority to make medical decisions for me if I were deemed incapacitated. My eyes scanned to the bottom of the page. There, in blue ink, was my signature. It looked like my handwriting. It had the loops and the slant of my handwriting. But I knew, with a certainty that chilled my blood, that I had never seen this document before in my life. I arrived at the bank 5 minutes before the doors unlocked at 9 o'clock. When the manager turned the key, I was the first person across the threshold. I did not go to the teller line this time. I walked straight to the customer service desk and requested printed statements for the last 12 months for every account bearing my name. The young associate handed me a stack of paper thick enough to be a novella. I did not leave. I took the stack to a round table in the far corner of the lobby. I chose that seat deliberately. It was directly beneath the wide-angle security camera. If Ethan tried to claim later that I was erratic or confused, there would be high-definition video of me sitting calmly, posture erect, working with the focus of a forensic accountant. I took out my red pen. I started circling. It was not just the small leaks I had noticed before. It was a hemorrhage. I tallied the numbers in the margins, my hand steady despite the nausea rising in my throat. In total, $47,930 had vanished. Most of the damage had been inflicted in just the last 6 weeks. It was a smash-and-grab job disguised as household management. Then I saw it. A wire transfer from 10 days ago. $9,800. The recipient was not a doctor, or a contractor, or an insurance company. It was Holloway and Vance, LLP in Seattle. The memo line read, "Consulting Retainer." I pulled out my phone and dialed the number listed on the firm's website. Holloway and Vance. "How may I direct your call?" A bright voice answered. "I am calling regarding a payment made from the Gaines account," I said. keeping my voice professional and flat. I need to verify the case reference number for my records. One moment, she said. I heard the click of typing. Ah, yes. That is for the retainer on Mr. Ethan R. Gaines's file, regarding the guardianship and capacity petition. The air left my lungs as if I had been punched. Guardianship, I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Yes, ma'am. For the elderly dependent. Is this regarding the hearing schedule I hung up? My hand was slick with sweat against the phone screen. They did not just want my savings. They were using my own money to hire lawyers to declare me incompetent. They were paying for my shackles with the fruit of my own labor. I needed to know the full scope of the attack. I drove straight to the Silver Pine Community Outreach Center. I walked to the administrative office, but the door was locked. Through the glass, I saw the administrative director, Susan, look up. She saw me, and her eyes widened. She immediately looked down at her desk and picked up her phone. A minute later, my phone pinged. It was an email from Susan. We are reviewing allegations. Please do not come to the premises. Cowards. I walked back to my car, feeling radioactive. Then, a text message popped up from Brenda, a woman I had worked alongside at the food drive for 3 years. Loretta? I shouldn't be telling you this. The text read, but someone sent the board a file. It is an audio clip. It sounds like your voice. You are laughing about skimming the top of the donation fund. Everyone is freaking out. I stared at the words. A voice clip. I had never stolen a dime. I had never even joked about it. I drove home, the pieces clicking together like the tumblers of a safe, the stolen money, the fake medical power of attorney, the guardianship lawyer, and now, a fabricated crime to destroy my credibility so no one would believe me when I fought back. I stood before the mirror in the hallway. I looked at the grey hair and the lines around my eyes. They saw a victim. They saw a confused old woman who should step aside. If they want to construct a story, I whispered to my reflection, then I will construct the truth, and I will build it with paper and time. I sat in the waiting room of Marisol Vance's law office, clutching my handbag so tightly my knuckles turned white. The office did not smell like potpourri or old books. It smelled like sanitized glass and printer toner. Marisol was a woman made of sharp angles and tailored grey wool. She did not offer me tea or sympathy. She simply opened a fresh legal pad and looked at me with eyes that had seen every variation of family greed imaginable. We call this financial exploitation, Marisol said, her voice dry and precise. But the end game here is guardianship. Ethan is not just trying to take your money. Loretta, he is trying to take your personhood. If the court grants him guardianship, you lose the right to vote. You lose the right to decide where you live. You lose the right to marry, to travel, or to spend a single dollar without his permission. I felt a cold sweat break out on my back. I remembered teaching Ethan to ride a bike, holding the seat while he wobbled down the driveway. Now he wanted to take the wheels off my life. There is something else, I stammered, the shame burning my cheeks, my volunteer organization. They suspended me. Someone sent them an audio recording. It sounds like me. In the clip, I am laughing about stealing funds. Marisol did not gasp. She did not even blink. She just wrote a note on her pad. Deep fake, she said. Voice cloning technology is cheap and accessible now. If they have enough samples of your voice from voicemails or videos, they can make you say anything. We will need the metadata from that file. Do not delete anything. She leaned forward, her demeanor shifting from analytical to urgent. You need to get a cognitive evaluation, she said. And you need to do it today. But isn't that what they want? I asked. To prove I am crazy? No, Marisol corrected. They want to drag you to their doctor, one who is primed to see dementia in every pause you take. You need to go to an independent specialist on your own terms, right now. We need a piece of paper dated today that says you are fully competent. We need to secure the high ground before they even file the paperwork. I left her office with a list of instructions that felt like a battle plan. I drove straight to a neurologist Marisol recommended for an emergency consult. I sat through the tests, answering questions about the date, the president, and counting backward from 100 by sevens. I was terrified I would slip. That grief had actually eaten holes in my brain. But my answers were crisp. I was not losing my mind. I was just heartbroken. That afternoon, I went to the hardware store. I did not go home first. I bought a new deadbolt and a video doorbell system. I called a locksmith to meet me at my house. When he drilled out the old lock, the one Ethan had a key to, I felt a physical pang in my chest. I was locking out my own child, but I reminded myself that the man who sent that text message was not the boy I raised. Janice came over at 6 in the evening. Janice used to be a social worker, and she possessed a cynicism that I suddenly found comforting. She sat at my kitchen table, drinking black coffee, helping me organize the chaos. We need a timeline, Janice said, opening her laptop. Every text, every withdrawal, every weird comment Mallory made at Thanksgiving. We worked for hours. Then, I decided to call my general practitioner's office to ensure my medical records were locked down. The receptionist, a new girl I did not recognize, sounded confused when I gave her my request. Oh, I see a note here that we should direct updates to your emergency contact, she said. Mallory Gaines. I froze. Who Mallory Gaines? She was added 3 weeks ago. The previous contact, a Janice, something, was removed. I looked across the table at Janice, who was furiously typing notes. She had been my emergency contact for 10 years. Mallory had erased her. My daughter-in-law had quietly, surgically cut the lines to my support system weeks before they sent that text. Remove her, I said, my voice trembling with rage. Remove her immediately. Mallory Gaines is not to have access to my information. I hung up and looked at the timeline Janice was building. It was a map of betrayal. I called Marisol to report the update. Her voice, on the other end of the line, was the only steady thing in my world. They are trying to paint a picture of a woman who has lost control, Marisol said. If they want to strip you of your rights, Loretta, you must prove that you are still driving the car, and you must prove that they are the ones trying to joyride. The rain beat against the siding of my house, a relentless, drumming rhythm that matched the pounding in my temples. It was late afternoon when a car pulled into my driveway. I did not need to look out the window to know who it was. I checked the app on my phone connected to the new doorbell I had installed only hours before. Ethan stood on the porch, shaking water from his umbrella. But he was not alone. Mallory was there, clutching a plastic file folder against her chest, and behind them stood a stranger, a man in a beige raincoat who looked bored and deficient. I opened the door but kept the screen door locked between us. The mesh was a flimsy barrier, yet it felt necessary. Mom, it is freezing out here, Ethan said. He offered a smile that did not reach his eyes. Can we come in? Who is he? I asked, ignoring his request. Ethan sighed, the sound of a patient parent dealing with a toddler. This is Mr. Henderson. He is a care coordinator from Serenity Transitions. We brought him along to help explain things. Explain what? That you are tired, Ethan said, his voice dropping to that terrifyingly gentle register he had adopted recently. We have decided that it is time for you to step away from the financial burdens and the daily responsibilities. You need rest. Mom. We are just trying to facilitate that. You decided. I repeated, based on what authority Mallory stepped forward. She held the plastic folder up to the screen. She pulled out a single sheet of paper and pressed it against the mesh. It was a photocopy, grainy and slightly crooked. We have the power of attorney, Loretta, Mallory said. You signed it. Remember, we just want to make sure you do not hurt yourself or lose any more money. I squinted at the paper. It was the same document I had found in my file box, the one I knew I had never seen. I focused on the signature at the bottom. It certainly looked like my name. It had the same slant, the same loop on the capital L. But as I looked closer, I saw the flaw. When I write my name, I lift the pen slightly before crossing the two T's. The signature on the paper was a continuous, fluid motion. A trace job done by someone who focused on the shape, but did not know the rhythm of my hand. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tear the door open and shout that they were liars. But I remembered Marisol's advice. Stay calm. Gather evidence. I do not recall signing that, I said. Keeping my face impassive, I will have my lawyer look at it. The air on the porch changed instantly. Ethan's posture stiffened. He took a half step closer to the screen, his shadow falling over me. Mom, listen to me, he said. And the gentleness was gone, replaced by a soft, sleek menace. If you involve lawyers, everything becomes public. The investigation at Silver Pine, that becomes news. Do you want the whole town to think you are an embezzler? Do you want to ruin your reputation forever? He was betting on my pride. He thought the fear of shame would make me fold. I want the truth, I said. I raised my hand and pointed to the small, black circle of the doorbell camera lens next to the doorframe. And I suggest you watch your tone. Everything is being recorded. Ethan flinched. He looked at the camera, then back at me, his jaw tightening. The man in the beige raincoat, Mr. Henderson, cleared his throat. He looked at his watch, clearly annoyed by the delay. Mr. Gaines, if the client is going to be non-compliant, we might need to look at the involuntary intake protocols we discussed. I have the file open right here. My blood ran cold. Client, I asked sharply. I have never hired you. I am not your client. Mr. Henderson blinked, realizing his mistake. He snapped his mouth shut, but the damage was done. They had already opened a file. They had already planned an intake. They were not here to talk. They were here to collect me. We are leaving, Ethan said abruptly. He grabbed Mallory's elbow. Mom, you are not thinking clearly. We will try again when you are less agitated. They turned and walked back into the rain. I watched them go, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I waited until their taillights disappeared down the street before I unlocked my phone and opened the video clip of the last 5 minutes. I played it back, watching the scene unfold in high definition. I watched Ethan threaten me. I watched the stranger call me a client. And then I saw something I had missed in the heat of the moment. I rewound the video to the second I mentioned the word lawyer on the small screen. I saw Mallory's face. She did not look surprised. She looked calculating. At the exact moment I said the word, she reached out and squeezed Ethan's forearm, 2 quick, sharp pulses. It was not a gesture of comfort. It was a signal. It was a code they had rehearsed. I saved the video to the cloud and then emailed a copy to Marisol. They thought they were playing a game with a confused old woman. They did not realize they had just walked onto my stage, and I had captured their entire performance. The dining room table was no longer a place for meals. It had transformed into a command center. Janice sat opposite me, her reading glasses perched on the end of her nose, typing furiously on her laptop. We were not just looking at numbers anymore. We were building a map of deceit. Loretta. Unlock your phone and open your location history, Janice said, not looking up from the spreadsheet she had created. I want to cross-reference the emergency withdrawals Ethan made against your GPS data. We worked for 3 hours straight. The results were damning. On the 12th of October, a withdrawal of $400 was made from an ATM in downtown Spokane at 10 in the morning. My phone location history placed me squarely inside the break room of the public library, 5 miles away, eating a yogurt. On November 3rd, a purchase for $250 at a sporting goods store was authorized at 2 in the afternoon. At that exact moment, my GPS showed I was parked in my own driveway, waiting for a plumber. He got sloppy, Janice muttered, highlighting the rows in bright yellow. He assumed you would never look. He thought you were just a confused old lady who would trust her son blindly. I said, feeling a bitter taste in my mouth. Until I wasn't. My lawyer, Marisol, wasted no time. She sent a litigation hold letter to the bank and to the board of Silver Pine Community Outreach. It was a legal grenade that froze everything in place. It compelled them to preserve every server log, every login record, and every internal email. They could not delete a single byte of data without facing a judge. That afternoon, the pressure from Marisol's letter cracked the first seal. I received an encrypted email from a personal address. It was from the young IT administrator at Silver Pine, a quiet boy I had often shared cookies with during my shifts. Mrs. Gaines. I cannot use my work email, he wrote, but you need to know about the anonymous complaint. The header information on the email that accused you of theft was masked, but they did a poor job. The routing path traces back to a residential internet service provider in the Tower District. I stared at the screen. The Tower District was where Ethan and Mallory lived. It was not a random stranger. It was not a mistake. My own son and daughter-in-law had sent an email accusing me of a crime to strip me of my reputation. Before I could process the betrayal, my phone rang. It was Marisol. We got the audio clip, she said, her voice brisk. Your friend at the food bank came through. I sent it to a forensic audio specialist in Seattle. He just called me back. Is it me? I asked, my hand gripping the phone. It sounds so much like me. It is a synthesis, Marisol said. The expert found digital artifacts in the breathing patterns. The pauses are mathematically perfect, not biological. It is a deep fake. Loretta, probably created using voicemail samples and AI software. It is a forgery. They manufactured evidence, I said. That is a crime. It gets worse. Marisol continued. I looked into that $9,800 payment to Holloway and Vance. I called a clerk I know at the courthouse. That money was not a retainer to defend you against these fake embezzlement charges. That was a filing fee and retainer for a petition for guardianship. I closed my eyes. They had used my own money to pay a lawyer to enslave me. They were going to walk into court, play a fake recording of me admitting to a crime, show a fake medical power of attorney, and ask a judge to hand them the keys to my life. What do we do? I asked. We stop playing defense, Marisol said. We nuke the bridge. I hung up and dialed a number I had looked up earlier. It was the hotline for Adult Protective Services. When the intake officer answered, my voice did not shake. My name is Loretta Gaines, I said clearly. I am 56 years old. I am calling to report a case of elder financial abuse, coercion, and identity fraud. The perpetrators are my son, Ethan Gaines, and his wife, Mallory. I gave them everything. I gave them the case numbers Marisol had filed. I gave them the name of the forensic audio expert. I told them about the fake power of attorney and the isolation tactics. We are opening a file immediately, the officer said, his tone shifting from bureaucratic to serious. We will be dispatching an investigator to interview Mr. Gaines within 48 hours. I ended the call and looked at Janice. She was smiling, a grim, satisfied smile. They wanted you to step away, Janice said. I did. I replied, looking at the pile of evidence on my table. I stepped away so I could get a running start. I knew what would happen next. When APS knocked on Ethan's door, the polite mask would fall off completely. They would panic. They would lash out. But for the first time in weeks, I did not feel fear. I was waiting for it. The silence of my house was replaced by the relentless vibration of my phone. It buzzed on the kitchen counter like an angry hornet. After the call to Adult Protective Services, the polite mask my son had worn for years completely disintegrated. He did not call to scream. He texted. It was a digital bombardment designed to wear me down. Mum, you are being manipulated by people who do not care about you. The first message read, 10 minutes later, that lawyer is a shark. She just wants your money. When the money is gone, she will leave you with nothing. Then, a darker turn. You are destroying this family. Dad would be ashamed of you. I did not reply. I let the messages pile up, each one a brick in the wall of evidence I was building. But while Ethan was attacking my phone, Mallory was attacking my perimeter. I went out to check the mail and saw my neighbor, Mrs. Gable, standing by her hedge. She looked at me with a mixture of pity and fear. Loretta, she called out, clutching a piece of paper. I didn't know things had gotten so bad. She handed me a letter she had found in her mailbox. It was typed on heavy stationery. Dear neighbors, we regret to inform you that Loretta is struggling with significant cognitive decline. It read, she has become forgetful and potentially dangerous. Please be patient if she seems confused or leaves appliances on. We are working on a solution. My hands shook as I handed it back. This is a lie. Martha, keep it. If anyone asks, you tell them I am as sharp as I have ever been. I went back inside, locking the door. The phone rang again. It was a number I did not recognize. I answered, expecting another attack. Mrs. Gaines, a receptionist, asked. I am calling from Dr. Evans's office to confirm the cancellation of your competency evaluation tomorrow. My heart stopped. Dr. Evans was the independent specialist Marisol had found, the one person who could prove I was sane. I did not cancel that appointment, I said, my voice rising. Oh. The receptionist sounded confused. We received a call 20 minutes ago from a woman identifying herself as you. She verified your date of birth and your mother's maiden name. She said she was too confused to drive and needed to reschedule for next month. They had my security questions. They had my personal history. They were not just gaslighting me. They were impersonating me. That was not me. I said firmly, I will be there tomorrow. And I want you to put a note in my file. No changes are to be made over the phone. Ever. I called Marisol immediately. She did not sound surprised. We are locking it down. She said, go to your patient portal. Set up two-factor authentication. We are putting a password on your medical file that only you know. If they want to play identity theft, we will treat them like hackers. But the attacks were happening faster than I could parry them. An hour later, my bank called. Mrs. Gaines. We are reviewing the application for the home equity line of credit you submitted this morning, the loan officer said. We just need to verify the email address. Is it loretta.gaines.official@gmail.com? No, I said, gripping the edge of the counter to keep from falling. I did not apply for a loan. That is not my email address. Someone submitted the deed to your house and your tax returns, the officer said, his voice dropping. They were trying to cash out 80% of your home's equity. They were trying to liquidate me. They knew the guardianship hearing was coming, and they were trying to drain the assets before the judge could stop them. Freeze it. I commanded. Freeze everything. If anyone tries to access that account, I want the police called. I hung up and walked through my house. I checked every window. I checked the cameras. I was living in a fortress of my own making. I realized then that I could no longer trust the phone, the mail, or even my own digital footprint. I decided to go dark. I routed all calls to voicemail. I set up an auto-reply on my email, directing all inquiries to Marisol. The sun went down, casting long shadows across the living room. My phone lit up one last time with a text from Ethan. You'll be sorry. It was short. It was vicious. And for the first time in weeks, I did not feel fear. I felt clarity. I took a screenshot of the message. I walked to the printer and printed it out on a crisp sheet of white paper. I punched holes in it and snapped it into the binder Marisol had given me. I took a red pen and wrote in the margin, Threat number 1. Let them come. I was ready. The morning the Adult Protective Services investigator returned, I was not wearing my bathrobe. I was dressed as if I were going to a board meeting. The kitchen table was cleared of breakfast dishes and covered instead with stacks of color-coded files. Mr. Lewis, the investigator, sat opposite me, flipping through the timeline Janice and I had constructed. He looked at the bank statements, the printed screenshots of the threatening text messages, and the preliminary report from the audio forensic specialist. This is substantial, Mr. Lewis said, tapping the heavy binder. Usually, we have to dig for weeks to find half of this. I do not have weeks, I said, clasping my hands on the table to hide a tremor. My son is trying to erase me. I am just making sure the ink stays permanent. Marisol moved fast. She filed an emergency motion with the court to block any temporary guardianship orders, citing the evidence of the deepfake audio and the unauthorized withdrawals. We thought that would slow them down. We were wrong. They did not stop. They pivoted. 2 days later, Marisol forwarded me a notification from the court. Ethan had filed a counter-petition for immediate guardianship. Attached to the filing was a sworn affidavit from a woman named Carla Vance. I read the statement on my computer screen. my breath catching in my throat. I have known Loretta for years. The affidavit read. She has become increasingly paranoid. She tells wild stories about people stealing her money. She believes her son is plotting against her. It is sad to watch her decline into these delusions. I stared at the name. Carla Vance. It sounded familiar, but not in the way a friend's name does. It was a name from the periphery of my life. Then, the memory clicked into place. I met this woman once, I told Janice, pointing at the screen. At the Autumn Jubilee Fair last year, she was selling beeswax candles. We spoke for maybe 5 minutes about gardening. I have never seen her since. Janice, ever the bloodhound, opened her laptop. She searched for the name, filtering through social media and professional networks. She found a profile on a job-seeking site. Look, Janice said, turning the screen toward me. She is not just a candle maker. She lists her occupation as a senior companion freelancer for Serenity Transitions. The pieces locked together. Serenity Transitions was the same company that had sent the man in the beige raincoat to my door, the man who had called me a client before I had even spoken to him. Ethan was not just hiring care coordinators. He was utilizing a network of paid witnesses to fabricate a history of my mental decline. They are manufacturing a reality where I am crazy, I said. And we are going to dismantle it, Janice replied. My phone rang. It was Marisol. We got the report on the signature, Marisol said, her voice sharp with adrenaline. The medical power of attorney. It is a forgery, but it is a lazy one. The forensic document examiner found pixelation around the signature line that does not match the rest of the document. What does that mean? I asked. It means they did not just trace it, Marisol explained. They lifted a digital scan of your signature from an old document, probably a tax return from 3 or 4 years ago, based on the ink density, and they digitally pasted it onto the new form. It is a scan and stitch job, so they used my own hand against me, I said. Exactly. But because it is a digital paste, it is fraud, provable, criminal fraud. I did not stop there. To drive the final nail into the coffin of their narrative, I scheduled a second independent medical evaluation. I went to a highly respected neuropsychologist in the city. I spent 4 hours undergoing rigorous cognitive testing. When I left his office, I held a sealed letter stating unequivocally that I possessed full executive function and decision-making capacity. I sat in Marisol's office the next morning, placing the sealed letter on her desk next to the fraud report. They are arrogant, Marisol said, looking at the file. They think you are weak. They think the court will rubber stamp this because you are a widow living alone. They are tying the noose around their own necks. Your job is to pull at the right time. I looked at the stack of papers. This was no longer just about protecting my savings. This was about survival. Pull, I said, my voice steady. But by the law. The air in the county courthouse smelled of floor wax and stale anxiety. I sat at the plaintiff's table, my back straight, my hands folded on top of the heavy binder of evidence. To my right, Ethan and Mallory sat with their attorney. They looked like a portrait of responsible adulthood. Ethan wore a navy suit I had never seen before, and Mallory wore a modest grey dress and pearls. They had dressed for a funeral. And in a way, they had. They were here to bury my independence. Their lawyer, a man with a booming voice and a condescending smile, opened the proceedings by painting a picture of a woman unraveling. Your Honor, he said, gesturing vaguely in my direction, Mrs. Gaines is a beloved mother and grandmother. But since the death of her husband, her decline has been rapid. She forgets passwords. She misses appointments. She becomes agitated over minor issues. We are simply asking for the legal authority to keep her safe from herself. I watched Ethan. He nodded solemnly, playing the part of the heartbroken son perfectly. Then it was Marisol's turn. She did not use adjectives. She used paper. Your Honor, Marisol said, her voice cutting through the room like a scalpel. This is not a petition for care. This is a documented hostile takeover. She began to lay out the cards we had spent weeks collecting. She presented the bank statements showing the unauthorized withdrawals. She showed the log of the attempted mortgage application on my home. She played the video from my doorbell camera where the care coordinator called me a client before ever speaking to me. And finally, she projected the image of the text message Ethan had sent me. We have decided you should step away for now. This text was not sent to a woman in crisis, Marisol stated. It was sent to a woman standing in a grocery store, 5 minutes before her bank accounts were frozen. The audio expert took the stand next. He was a young man, nervous but precise. He explained that the recording of me admitting to embezzlement contained digital artifacts consistent with synthetic voice generation. It is a collage, he said simply, not a recording. The judge, a stern woman with reading glasses perched on her nose, looked over her spectacles at Ethan. Mr. Gaines, please take the stand. Ethan walked up, adjusting his tie. He looked confident until Marisol asked her first question. Mr. Gaines, on the 12th of November, you withdrew $9,800 from your mother's savings account. What was this for? Ethan shifted in his seat. It was for household expenses, medical prep. Is that so? Marisol picked up a document. Because this check number corresponds to a payment made to the law firm of Holloway and Vance. You used your mother's money to pay the retainer for the lawyer you hired to strip her of her rights. Why, Ethan stammered. The sweat was visible on his forehead now. Mom is... She is not thinking straight. I had to secure counsel. I only wanted to protect the family assets. The room went silent. Marisol leaned in, her eyes locking onto his. The family assets? Or do you mean Loretta Gaines's assets? Ethan opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He looked at Mallory, but she was staring straight ahead, refusing to meet his gaze. Marisol did not let up. She called Mallory to the stand next. Mrs. Gaines. Marisol asked. Did you call Dr. Evans's office on the 14th to cancel Loretta's competency evaluation? Mallory said, her voice icy. I would never interfere with her medical care. Marisol held up a single sheet of paper. This is the call log from the cellular provider. It shows a 4-minute call to Dr. Evans's office at 9 in the morning on that date. The originating number is yours. Mallory's composure cracked. Her face flushed a deep, ugly red. The judge had seen enough. She set her pen down with a heavy thud. The petition for temporary guardianship is denied with prejudice. The judge ruled, her voice echoing in the silence. Furthermore, given the testimony regarding the misappropriation of funds and potential fraud, I am referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for a full investigation into financial exploitation. I looked at Ethan. The confidence was gone. The polished executive mask had dissolved, leaving behind the face of a frightened child who had been caught playing with matches. He looked at me, his eyes wide with panic. Mom, he whispered across the aisle. the word hanging in the air like smoke. I did not look away. I did not soften. I simply closed my binder. The sound of the metal rings snapping shut was the only answer he deserved. The morning of the final hearing, Marisol handed me a single sheet of paper. Her hands were shaking slightly, not from fear, but from the thrill of the kill. We had received an anonymous email at 4 a.m. It was a spreadsheet, dense with data, sent by a man named David, a junior analyst at Ethan's company, whom Ethan had thrown under the bus for a missed quarterly target. David was afraid of being implicated in a financial crimes investigation, so he sent us the receipt. "Look at the dates," Marisol whispered as we walked into the courtroom. I looked. On October 4th, I withdrew $2,000 for medical expenses. On October 5th, Ethan put a down payment of exactly $2,000 on a weekend cabin rental in Aspen. On November 1st, I paid $4,000 for insurance. On November 2nd, Ethan made a payment of $4,000 to a luxury car dealership for a new pickup truck. It was not a coincidence. It was a mirror. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was heavy. Ethan and Mallory sat stiffly, their confidence eroding with every piece of paper Marisol pulled from her briefcase. When Marisol projected the spreadsheet onto the screen, the colour drained from Ethan's face. "Your Honour," Marisol said, her voice ringing clear. "We have cross-referenced the withdrawals from Mrs. Gaines's accounts with the personal expenditures of Mr. Ethan Gaines. They match down to the cent. Furthermore, we have discovered that the care coordinator service Ethan hired is actually a shell company used to fabricate witness statements for guardianship petitions. It is a fraud ring, and my client was the target." The judge flipped through the evidence, her expression darkening. Then Marisol played her final card. "We subpoenaed the bank's digital access logs." Marisol continued. "Ethan claimed he only helped his mother when she asked, but these logs show unauthorized logins to her account at 3 a.m. from an IP address registered to the Wi-Fi router in Ethan's home. Loretta was asleep in her own bed 5 miles away while her son was awake, transferring her life savings into his own pocket. The gavel came down like a thunderclap. "The petition for guardianship is denied," the judge ruled, her voice cold. "The court finds Loretta Gaines to be fully competent. I am issuing an immediate, permanent protective order, barring Ethan and Mallory Gaines from any contact with the plaintiff. I am also freezing Mr. Gaines's assets pending a criminal inquiry into financial exploitation and elder abuse." We walked out of the courtroom. But the drama was not over. In the hallway, 2 uniformed officers were waiting. They stepped forward and blocked Ethan's path. "Ethan Gaines," one officer asked, "we have a warrant for your arrest for violation of a court order. We have logs of you attempting to contact the victim's medical providers again this morning to alter records." "No," Ethan shouted, pulling back as the handcuffs clicked around his wrists. "I was just trying to fix it." "Mum, tell them I am your son." I stopped. I turned to look at him one last time. He looked small. He looked pathetic. "I do not want revenge," I said to the room, my voice steady enough for the reporters near the exit to hear. "I want to stop the cycle where old people are turned into assets to be liquidated. You did not see a mother. Ethan, you saw a bank account with a pulse. As they led him away, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders that I had not realized I was carrying. That afternoon, I sent a certified letter to the board of Silver Pine Community Outreach. It contained the court's ruling and the forensic report on the deepfake audio. I demanded a full public apology. Within an hour, the organization issued a statement clearing my name. The investigation revealed the anonymous complaint had been sent from a burner phone that was billed to a credit card in Mallory's maiden name. I walked out of the courthouse steps into the bright afternoon sun. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from a number I did not know. How did you do that? I stared at the screen for a moment. I thought about typing back. I thought about explaining the sleepless nights, the fear, and the meticulous record-keeping. But then I realized I did not owe anyone an explanation. I turned off the screen, slid the phone into my purse, and gripped my file folder. I walked down the street, not as a victim, and not as a ghost, but as the owner of my own life. Thank you so much for listening to this story. If you enjoyed following Loretta's fight for justice, please drop a comment down below and tell me where in the world you are tuning in from. I love reading about all the different places our community calls home. Don't forget to subscribe to Grandma's Family Diary, hit that like button, and smash the hype button to help this story reach even more people who might need to hear it. Stay safe, and see you in the next video.